Well, hi there and welcome back to LittleVFarm. Today we finally are going to spend some time with you guys talking about all things fertilizer. We are super excited to share with you guys not only what we use, but how we use it, what we think, works best for us, and kind of our routine around fertilizing. We are really just looking forward to sharing this with you guys because I think the biggest question we kind of get asked is like, oh, what tips do you have for tomatoes, or what tips do you have for your peppers? And guys, we've told you before, we are just a year into this growing cycle and getting our feet underneath us when it comes to gardening. So I would have to say for us, the biggest things that we always attest are going to be the soil, and it's going to be the fertilizers and the food that we basically give into the plants to feed them.
So typically what we're going to use for fertilizing is going to be the AgroThrive fruits and flowers fertilizer, which is the one that China has there. We brought out the general purpose as well. It has a slightly lower potassium level. The reason why we brought this one out today is just because we noticed that a lot of our fall and winter vegetation going through our first full year of growing is typically not flowering vegetation. So everything we've shown you going into fall, the majority of that stuff does not show flowering before you harvest. Root crops like beets and carrots don't flower. We have a lot of herbs that if they do flower, typically will be bad news and signs of bolting. So typically the things that you won't see flowering, like our root crops and our herbs, are also the leafy greens like our arugula, lettuce. So it's just important to make sure that you're supporting your plants in the way they need to be supported.
Obviously, everyone has a different level of gardening knowledge, and we are only a year in ourselves, so we're still trying to learn a lot, and we don't want to get ahead of ourselves or anyone who is watching and assume anything about anyone's knowledge. So for us, we want to make sure that you guys understood, because we didn't for a while, what the three numbers on the front of any of those fertilizers mean. So like Andrew said, this one here is a 332. That's going to be your NPK. So this first number here, this 3, is going to be nitrogen. That's what that N stands for. And the nitrogen is going to be 3% in this bottle. So it's basically saying 3% of this fertilizer makeup is going to be the nitrogen. So the next number is going to be phosphorus, and it's a 3 as well. So same thing as the nitrogen, it's 3% phosphorus in this bottle, in this makeup. And then that last number, the K, is actually going to be potassium. So the potassium is only 2% in here. And as you can see with both of these fertilizers, the AgroThrive, they're both really gentle organic fertilizers with really low NPK, meaning they're safe to use weekly. And for us, which is great, they're safe to just pour on the plants. You don't have to worry about any sort of like leaf burn or any sort of issues because they are such a low NPK. And just fun fact for you, I feel like some people might think this is common knowledge, but I was really surprised. I was like, why is NPK, like why is K potassium? And I'm sure somebody's looking at the screen right now and going, duh, but I didn't know, so somebody else probably doesn't know. It's actually for the periodic table. The NPK is their periodic symbol, and that's what the number is for the fertilizer. So I thought that was just kind of cool. But so we're going to go ahead and get started. We're going to show you guys how we measure out and how we choose what we use for each bed.
So after fertilizing a little bit, what we're doing here is just watering down the fertilizer. Like we said, we don't necessarily try to avoid leaves or anything, so we don't water beforehand. Typically the soil is not bone dry, but we will try to kind of leave it where it doesn't necessarily need to be watered before it's fertilized. We'll fertilize and then get all of the fertilizer off the leaves and kind of give it a quick water in by just kind of doing maybe a 5-minute water on each bed, maybe even a little less, but you don't want to do too much. So, this bed actually doesn't have anything that has true leaves yet. We put a few things down that takes a little bit longer to come up. I think it was a few carrots and things like that, which can take up to 2 weeks to germinate. So I'm just going to water in and make sure that any of these last few seedlings that haven't germinated already have an opportunity to. And yeah, we can skip on the fertilizing here.
Okay, so we're going to go ahead and get some fertilizer mixture put together. We're going to show you guys how we measure it out and how much we put in each bed. This is not science. Even honestly, me saying how much we measure out is a lie. We don't measure, but let me show you guys how we do it.
So right now we're going to be using the general purpose fertilizer. We're going to fertilize some of our new beds, this half and half pepper and leafy green bed. We're going to do some of our root crops, like I mentioned, the herb bed with this, and then we'll swap into the fruits and flowers afterwards for the tomato beds that I mentioned, the 2 tomatoes. beds with the marigolds, and then the pepper bed that's going to be pretty much 100% peppers. This one's 50-50, so we're going to support the growth of the new seedlings that we have in here. And also, like we mentioned, this one's just a little bit softer in the NPK values. So before seedlings start to have more than just the true leaves coming in, you want to make sure that you either dilute the amount of fertilizer that you're putting in or just kind of reduce the NPK values. Like I said, we've never seen any kind of burning on our leaves or roots, but we don't want to cause any shock or any disruption in the natural growth of these seedlings as they come up. So we'll go ahead and get started. We're going to do no measurements, as we kind of said earlier. If you guys want to know, just for fun, the measurements show for mature plants it's going to be 4 ounces of fertilizer concentrate with 1 gallon of water, and then for starter plants it's 2 ounces for the same ratio. So it's basically you're dropping it in half. Right now I'm going to pour a bit in. I'll show you about how much I would put in here. Like I said, there's half seedlings and half kind of mature pepper plants, but these pepper plants are really at the end of their cycle, so we want to make sure that we're supporting the plants that we want to see development in. So I'll go ahead and pour some in. And we'll use this for probably 1 or 2 more beds. Seedlings don't need as much fertilizer per square foot here. We reduce the amount. If you have mature plants like we did midsummer with the tomato plants and things like that, we generally put 1 pail or 1 watering can per bed. And so we definitely increased our fertilization and the amount of concentrate that we used. However, going into, when you're transplanting certain seedlings and things like that, you can reduce and dilute that significantly and probably save some money. So go ahead. I try to consistently have a mix here as I'm adding the water. You want to make sure that you are kind of getting the concentrate distributed evenly in the mixture so that your plants definitely have an even amount of fertilizer throughout. I don't fill it up all the way because I've noticed that if you're using a watering can, you want to keep it a little lower than the tippy top or you get a little bit of spillage here. So I'll go ahead and start. I'm not going to do too much on the seedlings, just a quick little watering of the fertilizer. We'll spend some time around the peppers. I try to get around the base, and we'll get some of the seedlings back here. Like I mentioned, we have broccoli in here in the back. We have some arugula here that I'm going through now. The first thing I watered at the front corner there was collards. And then we have some serrano peppers, shishito peppers, and banana peppers, right? Mm-hmm. Yep, that's it. So that's going to be kind of watering through here. I'll use whatever's left in here. There's not too much on some of the other beds, and then we'll keep it going. What's funny is I mix in a weird way, and I don't know, I'm a 90s baby, and I watched Gullah Gullah Island growing up, and I remember one of the lessons they showed as, for kids growing up is if you're mixing things, you want to do 3 turns to the left and 3 turns to the right to kind of agitate the stirring a bit. And so that's how I stirred the fertilizer.
Oh my gosh, that is so funny. I remember that too, Gullah Gullah Island.
We'll go ahead and get the insect netting lifted off of here. All right, so I'm going to use, I kind of refilled this. I'm going to use it for probably these 2 beds. There's a lot of growth. We used the square foot gardening method for these beds, so that's condensely sown, and so I'm going to make sure that they get all the love they need. So. All right, so what we're doing now is we're just going to kind of rinse off the leaves and give it a quick water. Like I kind of have been going through. I don't know if you guys noticed, but when we started, we didn't water at all. And it's probably been a day or 2 maybe. The soil's not bone dry, but we try to leave it a little drier than normal before fertilizer day. And then we use the opportunity to kind of do a bit of a combination of watering the fertilizer in, getting a quick little soak for the surface of the soil, but really it's not too dry at all. I was messing with some of the soil earlier, and within the first maybe inch, I was feeling, how moist it actually was. But you don't want to overwater on fertilizer day because it can really dilute this fertilization process and reduce the effectiveness. So I try to give it a quick water, maybe 5 minutes each bed or less, just to get it kind of mixed in and make sure that you're not watering or fertilizing into dry roots. And then I close up and wait a few days. So typically it'll take about 48 hours before you start to have this fertilizer become bioavailable to your plants within its root systems. So we typically will harvest the day before. We fertilize to promote growth to new fruits and flowers and new leafy green growth. So we'll start to see some improvement within a couple of days or so. We'll circle back and give you guys a video in a few days to let you know what the progress looks like in about 2 to 3 days. So we definitely have more than one strategy for feeding our plants, and there's more than one way to fertilize. So these are our soluble, or a few of our soluble options, but we also have granular options that we have in our garage. We took advantage of end of season clearance and bought a ton. Initially, when we put these beds down, we really got some great soil. As your beds go through the seasons and have different plants growing, succession after succession, the nutrients in the beds start to dwindle down, and you have to replenish that somehow. You do that through composting and fertilizing. Between seasons, we will use granular fertilizing and take you along that journey as well and show you what that looks like. But solubles is what we'll use once things are in the ground for that season. And then once they get pulled up, we will usually put the granular fertilizer in between our different vegetables that go into our bed. So we'll go ahead and keep going here.
So that's pretty much it. We're gonna go through and do a few more things out here, and then we'll close up the beds. But I mean, as you guys can see, for us at least with our routine around fertilizing, it's pretty easy for us to upkeep, and we might have a week where we just don't have it in us or don't have the time, so we don't come out here and do it, and we don't hold ourselves accountable. We feel good about any week we can come out here and add extra food into the plants. But like Andrew said, we put good soil in with good food in there, and we try to have strong routines. We try to give ourselves some grace where we can when it comes to homesteading.
Yeah, honestly, like I mentioned, a lot of these beds, when we flip them, we end up putting some really good fertilizer, granular fertilizer in there. We'll put some raised bed soil that we'll either make ourselves, or we'll buy some premium soil depending on what our situation is at that time or what we have in the house. And then, we also will use some compost when we do have it. So these beds are constantly being fed different types of nutrients and fertilizers. I think that's the key to a successful garden as well, is just to have a variety of ways to feed your plants. This is just one way to do that and get that done. But if you do need that boost mid-season, or let's say your plants are not getting enough water throughout the summer, there's different things that will cause stress and shock throughout your growing season, and you want to make sure that you're supporting your plants by making sure they have what they need. One reason why our tomato plants were able to live 6 to 8 months now are because they have been healthy and fed, which caused them to fight through different diseases and different pest issues, and continue to be resilient throughout that process.
Yeah, so I guess we want to talk with you guys now. I want to know what you guys are using. What are your routines around fertilizing? What questions do you have? We love the AgroThrive, and it is something, like we said, we have used all summer. We're super happy with it, but we love to hear what you guys are, using in your gardens, especially any of you seasoned homesteaders and gardeners. Please, we have a lot of people just like us that are still new with gardening and still new at homesteading. So please drop all of your advice in those comments. We love to see it. And we want to thank you as well for the continued feedback that we get. Everything, it just means so much to us.
Yeah, I have, kind of been viewing what we've been seeing in our community, and I just wanted to say thank you as well. Continue to let us know what you want to see, what works for you. Part of our learning journey is to continue to, get uncomfortable and learn different things and see what works best for us. And we won't be able to do that without trying
trial
and testing
error.
different
Yeah.
things. So
yeah, guys, so again, thank you so much for hanging out with us today. We loved being able to show you our process around fertilizing. We will continue to share all of our trials, tribulations, and experiments here at LittleVFarm. If you haven't already, make sure you subscribe so you don't miss out on future content. And if you enjoyed spending the day with us as well, make sure you hit that like button so we know. Until next time, guys, don't forget our motto here at LittleVFarm: anything grows if you try.